I wouldn't have more than 20. And if you do a fundamental bottom-up analysis, you can take this approach, but as you correctly stated, you can just buy the market. You can outperform everyone. In fact, we get a lot of requests from people to help who maybe can't afford to be in the fund. We like to help people. It's very rewarding. I love to see people grow their wealth. And when you have let's say you have $1 million portfolio. If you think along these lines, what you need to do is you need to do your research until you have the conviction to allocate 100,000 to that position. Otherwise, you're not making a meaningful investment. In fact, if you have $1 million portfolio, maybe you would start by making a 200,000 investment. And these are large convictions, so these are large allocations, so it should force you to make sure that you've done your homework, to make sure that you're allocating, because you wouldn't allocate 20% of your entire net worth to something unless you were sure. And you're not going to be sure what happens over the next year. It's almost impossible to tell what's going to happen over the next 12 months, but you can be very certain about what will happen over the next 5 years. You can see trends in the marketplace. You can see demands for goods and products. You can see earnings increasing. You can see margins that are strong. You can see a great business model, great management teams, and a low value, and you can become very confident. And that's when you can go ahead and put 20% of your net worth into a single possible opportunity. And it's that level of conviction that will allow you to really grow your net worth over 5 to 10 years.
I really like what you talk about in terms of the long-term mindset, right? Like you can see that Matthew, he is not looking at this company, how it's going to perform in the next year, right? In the next 2 years, but he's looking at like a minimum 5 years kind of horizon. And because of that, right, he's able to, in order to invest for 5 years, right, the kind of longer period of time, he also need to make sure that he really does his homework, right? So that he has a conviction. And I think a lot of times, one thing that I personally learned from my own past experience is that in the past, I was so greedy. I was trying to buy every single thing that I thought that was pretty good. But then, just like what you said, my conviction was so low that every single position was just a tiny, like a few $1,000s. And even though they gone up for like 100%, it's not going to make any real difference to my life, right? That's when I also realized that in order to really have that conviction to buy huge, to buy big, you really want to make sure you study hard, right? And if you don't want to study hard in terms of individual stocks, then it's probably better to just invest in ETF, in an index that you don't need to think too much, but then in the long run, it's still going to compound for you.
That's right. In fact, to add to that point, Chloe, when even family members, friends come to me looking for investment ideas, it's very difficult to give them an idea because they don't have any conviction. They don't have any background. So if I were to tell somebody to go and buy a specific stock and that stock were to fall by 10%, it's very common that they would panic because they don't know what's going on, and then they would sell and they would lose money. And so I've found a really simple standard approach, and it's done extremely well for everybody I've spoken to about this. They come to me and we have a $2 million minimum for our main class. We have an exception class, but for folks that aren't accredited and can't come up with that sort of capital, what do? And